Hey everybody, this is Cole with Rookie Ace. On today's Wings of Glory Okay, we'll try that again. Hey everybody, it's Cole, and on today's Wings of Glory Wednesdays post, we'll be looking at 8 highly effective scout planes that you should look at adding to your arsenal if you haven't already. 2 of these, the Fokker D7 and the SE5, we've already done videos on. At the end of this video, at the end cards, I'll actually include links to the videos that break down each of these individual planes. If you want to see them, check them out for sure. In this video, we're not going to be going as in-depth with these planes as we do with the individual plane breakdowns, simply because, you know, time constraints, and also these will all probably get their own video in due time. Anyway, so, to start off, the Fokker D7 is arguably the best fighter plane in Wings of Glory. It's highly maneuverable, got an excellent climb rate of 2, that means it only needs to play the climb card twice to be at another whole peg of altitude. And it's very robust with 16 points of damage. It's an excellent option to bring to the table, and as you can see, it repaints quite nicely. So that is one you should definitely look at. I think currently they're a little hard to get a hold of because they're in between reprints, but if you can find one, snap them up. Then you have the SE5, very fast as they come for fighters in Wings of Glory World War I, and also very robust with 16 points of damage and climbs on a 2. It has, it has a lot of SPAD-like maneuvers that are very wide and predictable, but this plane has enough tricks up her sleeve to remain, very unpredictable and throwing opponents off their rhythm. So the good news is these should be coming out this summer. Pre-order links will be in the description of this video. Be sure to check those out because this is going to be a hot item. I don't expect them to be around very long, chiefly because everybody's going to want one. So that's the SE5A and the Fokker D7. And then here is an interesting little plane. A plane kind of ahead of its time. It's a monoplane, only one wing. It's the Fokker E5, I believe. Yeah, so this is a fairly interesting little plane. I love the way it looks. It's just kind of cute, actually. But it has 15 points of damage, so it's still fairly robust. It climbs on a 2, so again, great climb rate. And it has the F maneuver deck, which is, a very reliable maneuver deck. It's shared by several planes. The F maneuver deck includes a tight turn to the left, a tight turn to the right, and a wide side slip to the left and right. Very serviceable and fairly fast. So, this is a very serviceable plane. If you want to add that to your arsenal, you could find lots of worse choices. This is a good plane. Sharing the same maneuver deck is the Nieuport 28. Basically, it is, for all purposes, just like the Fokker E5 that I just showed you, except it has 1 point of damage less. Historically, these planes, especially when diving, suffered fabric loss on the wings, so maybe that's why it takes one hit less to kill. But nonetheless, it's an American veteran of the Great War. It's a very fun little plane. I actually love the way it looks. It's just, I love the whole way it looks, from the rounded nose all the way to the slimmed down fuselage to the tail right there and the rounded wingtips. It's just a beautiful little aircraft. It climbs on a 2, and it uses the F deck, so it maneuvers exactly the same as the Fokker E3 that I just showed you. And it's got a shark mouth on it, this particular one. I mean, who wouldn't like a shark mouth plane? Let me see if I can get it in the camera here. I don't know if the camera's focusing, but yeah, it's a fun little plane. And okay, so that's the Nieuport 28. And right here we have an iconic plane of the Great War. Oftentimes, when people think of World War I aviation, this infamous sort of plane is the plane that comes to mind. It is the Fokker Dr1. So it's extremely nimble, but a little slow. So what you're going to want to do with the Dr1 is, play to its strengths. It only has 13 points of damage, which is more on the fragile side for fighter aircraft. All it needs is like 2 5 cards and a 3 and it's dead. So potentially in like 3 cards of damage you could be dead. Or like 1 card if you hit the boom card, the explosion card. That's true for any of these planes, so really that doesn't matter, but anyway. It climbs on a 2, so again, great climb rate, and it features 2 tight turns. I believe they are to the left, which is at odds to its nemesis, the Sopwith Camel. Nope, I take that back. It has 2 very tight turns to the right, so due to the rotary effect of its rotary engine, or the gyroscopic effect if we want to use the right term, due to that effect, the plane turns better to the right than it does to the left, chiefly because, as in history, the whole engine block was spinning with the propeller, so it wasn't a stationary engine. The whole engine block was whirling, so if the propeller was spinning to the right, well, the whole engine block was spinning to the right. Naturally, that would cause the plane to do much better turning to the right, just because it's the engine's pulling it forward in that direction anyway. It's a very fun little plane. It's not going to outrun like the SE5 or SPADs, but it can certainly outmaneuver them and give them plenty to think about whilst engaged. And then on the same note, you have the Sopwith Camel. I think this is probably even a little more effective than the DR1, even though it climbs worse. This one climbs on a 3, but it is faster. It has 15 points of damage, and has 3 tight turns to the right. Only plane in the game that has that, if I understand correctly. And it's a great all-round plane. The turn to the left is a little bit wide on the Camel, so the DR1 can certainly exploit that. But one thing I think personally about planes that climb on a 3 is sometimes those may have an advantage over planes that climb on a 2 in a fight, chiefly because a lot of the time, anytime you do an Implosion turn, you gain a climb counter. So a lot of the time these planes like the DR1 or the D7 will be flying around with 1 climb counter, and then they'll see a position where they're like, oh, if I played an Implosion turn here, I'd have a perfect shooting position next turn. Then they think, oh wait, I've got 1 climb counter already. If I did that Implosion turn, I'd be at a whole nother level of altitude, and I'd lose, valuable cards of damage that I could perhaps deal to him. And with the Sopwith Camel, or any plane that climbs on a 3, you can kind of fly around and bank those climb counters, so you can have 1 or 2 banked before you need to do a whole nother peg of altitude. I think that's kind of a personal thing I've noticed. There are definitely ways you can exploit using a higher climb rate if you know what you're doing, but this might be a little more beginner friendly, so you're not changing altitude all that much, also suddenly, but also you have, a decent enough climb rate to get away if you need to. So those are just my thoughts on climb rate, and here we go. We've got the Sopwith Snipe, introduced in the last months of the war, if I understand correctly. The Sopwith Snipe was Britain's answer to the deadly D7. And in the game, it actually is quite deadly. It has tight turns to the right and to the left, and it has a wide side slip to the right and to the left, which the D7 does not have. It climbs on a 2 as well, and takes 16 points of damage. So it is more than a match for the D7, even though it doesn't have the stall turn or the short straight card, so it's a very capable airplane, and it's kind of a jack of all trades. It can turn fight, it can energy fight, it just is a reliable plane. So if you find one of these, be sure to pick them up, and the one gripe I have against them is nothing personal, really. It's just the British never had very garish paint schemes, and I love the gaudy paint schemes you find on the German side. So a lot of these snipes you'll see are pretty much the same color, with maybe a slight variation on the roundels. I believe there's a Russian one out there, but if you find one, for sure get some of the standard British, but then feel free to try and repaint some. They deserve it. again, that's just a personal preference. Some people may really like the standardized British look, you know. I like it to a point. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, here is a personal favorite of mine. This is the Siemens-Schuckert D3. I probably terribly mispronounced that, but maybe it's pronounced Siemens-Schuckert. Let me know in the comments below and I'll start calling it by its proper name. But anyway, this is a very, very nice little plane. It is a bit on the fragile side with 14 points of damage, but it climbs on a 2 and has tight turns in both directions, as well as large side slips to either direction. And it's just it's a fun little plane to field. So like there you have a wide side slip. It's a very fun plane to field against enemies because, you know, people really don't know what it's going to do next. And it's just, until the D7 came out and was re-released, this was my go-to German plane when I started thinking of, okay, now what is the best German plane out there? So, it's just, it's decently fast enough where it'll keep pace with just about everything. And, yeah. I loved it so much I painted it, so there you go. Alright, so that's very brief overviews on 8 highly effective aircraft, scout aircraft, that you can add to your collection. I've got 2 honorable mentions here that didn't quite make the list in my opinion. You got the Hanrio HD1. That is a very fun looking aircraft. I love the way it looks. I've said that about a lot of them, but you know, this is just a cool looking plane. But the thing is, for all practical purposes, it is the Nieuport 28, except it climbs slightly worse on a 3. But like I mentioned earlier in the video, that may be a plus depending on your playstyle. So this one didn't quite make the list, but you know, it's still something I'd recommend purchasing. And it uses the same deck as the Nieuport 28. It uses the F deck, so yeah, that's why and it has the same damage, so it's pretty much a Nieuport 28 that climbs one worse. Finally, we have the Phoenix D1. Now, this is a plane that got released more recently, and it is quite an interesting little bird. It climbs on a 2, I believe, just looking at my climb chart off to the side here. Yeah, I'm wrong. I am very wrong. According to the all-knowing sheet of knowledge, it climbs on a 3. Okay, so it climbs on a 3. So, it has a short straight, which the D7 also has. So it's basically a straight the length of a stall, but isn't steep. So that is a very cool trick it can pull out against enemies. Other than that, the maneuver deck isn't all that spectacular. It mirrors that of like the False D3, which we'll get into in another video. One reason it didn't quite make the list was because if you're using special rules, there is a special rule that applies to the Phoenix, which is if your guns jam, you cannot unjam them. This is because historically the guns were so far forward on the nose that the pilot had no way of reaching them. So if the gun jammed in combat, well, there's no hammering it to fix it or no cocking the unjamming lever. It's jammed and you're going back to base. So that's extremely annoying, but historical if you're if you kind of like self-punishment, you know. But it's fun, and but that's why it didn't quite make the list. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any planes that you think should have been on the list but weren't, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any that you really like that you'd like to bring to my attention for future videos, let me know. I'm all ears. Anyway, until I see you all again, salute and blue skies. Hey guys, if you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe by clicking on the shield in the top left corner. If you really liked what you saw and want to be a part of helping us make better content in the future, check us out on Patreon. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and blue skies.